Every Thursday evening, you sat down at the kitchen table. The coupon was already there, waiting. You had collected it from the man on Friday. You had carried it carefully all week, folded in your coat pocket, because losing it meant losing your chance, and your chance mattered. Because somewhere in Britain, the Windgast the coster, every single week, an ordinary person, someone exactly like you, sitting at a kitchen table exactly like yours, with a cup of tea going cold at their elbow, was about to become a millionaire. Not a celebrity, not a businessman, not someone who had been born into money or educated into opportunity, just an ordinary person with a pencil and a coupon and 8 correct score draws. The football pools was not just a game, it was the closest thing working-class Britain ever had to a genuine democratic weekly redistribution of wealth. For the price of a few shillings, you bought yourself 1 week of genuine, legitimate, mathematically possible hope. And the remarkable thing, the thing that nobody ever tells you about the football pools, is that the story behind that coupon is far more extraordinary than anything that happened when you filled it in. Because the men who ran the pools, the men who collected the coupons, the men who counted the money, and the handful of ordinary people who actually won, their stories are unlike anything else in the history of British working-class life. Today we are going to uncover the complete, untold story of the football pools. We are going to look inside the hidden machine that turns Saturday afternoon football into a multi-million-pound empire. We will reveal the secret life of your local collector, the friendly man at your door who was quietly running a cash business the taxman couldn't see. We will show you exactly what happened to the ordinary people who actually won the millions and the absolute nightmares that followed. And finally, the quiet, devastating moment when this incredible British dream was wiped out almost overnight. To understand what the football pools meant to ordinary British people in the 1960s, you have to understand what life felt like without it. You worked hard, you always had. You got up every morning and you put in your hours, and you came home tired and you did it again the next day, and the money you earned was enough, just about enough, for the things that needed to be paid for. The rent or the mortgage, the food, the coal, the children's shoes. But the thing you wanted, the thing that sat at the back of your mind like a warm light in a dark room, was just a little more. Not a fortune, not a yacht or a mansion or anything you had seen in a film. Just enough to pay off the mortgage outright, enough to buy a proper car without worrying about it, enough to take the children somewhere nicer than Blackpool this summer, enough to stop counting every single week and simply live. That was the dream. Small by modern standards, enormous by the standards of a working-class family in 1960s Britain. And every Thursday evening, for the price of a few shillings, the football pools gave you 24 hours of genuine, legitimate, statistically possible access to that dream. You did not feel foolish filling in the coupon. You did not feel like you were throwing money away, because the wins were real, the winners were real. They were people from streets exactly like yours, who had been filling in the same coupon for years, who had one Thursday evening looked at the results and gone very, very quiet. The pools was hope with a price tag, and for millions of British families, it was the most affordable luxury they owned. But where did it all come from? Who invented this extraordinary machine that turned the results of Saturday afternoon football matches into the weekly financial dreams of 8 million households? Because the story of how the football pools began is almost as remarkable as the story of the people who won it. The football pools was not invented by a faceless corporation in a glass office in London. It was invented by a young man from Manchester called John Moores. He was 21 years old. It was 1923, and he had 4p in his pocket and an idea that the football results could be turned into a weekly lottery for ordinary people. He stood outside Old Trafford with a handful of foul handwritten coupons and handed them to the crowd coming out from the match. Most people ignored him. A few took one, and from that freezing afternoon outside a football ground in Manchester, one of the most extraordinary business empires in British history began to grow. By the time you were sitting at your kitchen table in the 1960s filling in your Littlewoods coupon, the company behind it employed over 100,000 people. It was processing over 8 million postal entries every single week. It had its own printing works, its own postal infrastructure, its own fleet of vehicles, and at the center of it all was one family, the Moores family, who had turned a four-penny idea into a business worth hundreds of millions of pounds. But here is the part that most people do not know. Vernon's, Cope's Empire, Zetta's. There were dozens of Poles companies operating across Britain in the 1960s, all competing for the same customers, all processing the same results, all promising the same dream. At the peak of the Poles in the late 1960s, nearly half the adult population of Britain was entering at least one of them every single week. Half the adult population of Britain, every week, with a pencil and a coupon and the same quiet hope sitting in their chest. It was the largest participation in any form of organized gambling in human history, and it ran entirely on the trust of ordinary working people and on the shoulders of one of the most remarkable, most overlooked figures in the history of the British street. The Pools Collector, because the machine that processed 8 million entries a week did not run on computers or call centers or automated systems. It ran on one man, your man, the person who knocked on your door every Friday evening and whose relationship with your street was more complicated, more powerful, and more financially interesting than almost anyone ever realized. You knew him. You definitely knew him. He was not a stranger who arrived from nowhere. He was part of your week, part of the rhythm of your Friday, in the same way the milkman was part of your Monday morning. He knocked on your door at roughly the same time every week. You had his money ready, or you did not, and he knew which it was going to be before you opened the door, because he had been doing this round for years, and he knew every household on it as well as he knew his own. The Pools Collector was officially a part-time agent for Littlewoods or Vernon's or whichever company he represented. He collected the filled-in coupons and the weekly stake money, checked the totals, bagged it up and sent it off to Liverpool or wherever the processing centre was. For this he received a commission, a percentage of everything he collected. And this is where it gets interesting. A good Pools Collector on a solid round in a dense, working-class neighbourhood in the 1960s was collecting from between 200 and 500 households every single week. If each household was staking an average of 2 shillings and sixpence, a round of 300 households was generating £37, 10 shillings a week in stakes. The collector's commission was typically around 10% of the stakes he collected. That is nearly £4 a week, in addition to whatever his day job paid. £4 a week, cash, on top of his regular wage for walking round the same streets he walked anyway, knocking on the doors of people he already knew for a couple of hours on a Friday evening and again on a Saturday to deliver the results. But the real money, the money that made the smartest collectors genuinely comfortable in a way their neighbours could not quite account for, did not come from the commission alone. It came from the float. The collector was responsible for his own float. He paid out small wins from his own pocket and claimed them back from the company later. This meant he was constantly holding a sum of cash that was technically owed to either the company or his clients, but was in practice sitting in a tin in his kitchen until the paperwork caught up. But none of that compares to what happened to the people who actually got 8 score draws right, because the story of the Pools winners is one of the most extraordinary and heartbreaking in the entire history of working-class Britain. In 1961, a miner from Castleford called Keith Nicholson sat at his kitchen table on a Thursday evening and filled in his coupon. 4 children, a council house, a wage that covered the essentials and nothing else. The following Saturday, 8 correct score draws. He won £152,000, 60 times the average annual wage, enough to buy 60 terraced houses outright. When the press arrived, they asked his wife Viv what she was going to do with it. She looked directly into the camera and said 4 words that became the most famous 4 words in the history of the British working class. Spend, 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 without shame, without apology. She had spent her entire life making a little do a lot. Now she had a lot, and she was going to spend it. They bought a house, cars, clothes, holidays, everything always just beyond reach. They lived. But here is the part that rarely gets told. The money ran out. Keith died in a car crash in 1965, 4 years after the win. Viv was left alone with 4 children and a lifestyle built for a fortune that had gone. She married 4 more times, experienced bankruptcy, became a Jehovah's Witness. A musical was made about her life. She died in Castleford at 76, not far from the council house where it started. Viv was not a cautionary tale. The tragedy was not that she spent it. The tragedy was that she was given no help, no guidance, no protection from sudden enormous wealth landing on a woman who had never had any. She was not the only one. Some pools winners built lasting legacies. Others found the money simply replaced one set of pressures with a more bewildering set, and then something arrived that ended it. Not gradually, almost overnight, and more completely than anything the taxman had ever managed. On the 14th of November 1994, the first National Points Lottery draw was broadcast live on BBC One. 7 balls rolled down a tube, and the football pools, the nation's weekly flutter for over 70 years, began to die. Late 1960s, 8 million households entering weekly. By 2000, 2 million. By 2010, below 500,000. The pools companies tried to adapt. They merged, rebranded, moved online, but the magic was gone. Because the magic was never about the prize. It was about the ritual, the Thursday evening coupon, the collector at the door, the Saturday wait by the 4 radio, something that belonged to your street, your community, your way of life. You could not put that on a scratching card. Littlewood sold its pools operation in 2000. The collectors disappeared, the coupons disappeared, the Thursday evening ritual disappeared, and with them went something millions of British people felt as a genuine absence, a weekly ceremony of hope. Simply gone. But before we finish, the numbers behind the empire, John Moore's built on the back of your weekly shillings, will genuinely stop you in your tracks. John Moores died in 1993 with a personal fortune, estimated at over £1.7 billion, built on 4p and a handwritten coupon outside. Old Trafford in 1923, built on the weekly shillings of 8 million working-class households, on the hope inside a folded coupon, on 8 correct draws. Littlewoods at its peak employed 30,000 people in Liverpool alone. It owned the catalogue your family used to buy the children's school clothes on tick. It owned department stores on every major high street in Britain. One family, one idea, built entirely on your hope. And while John Moores died, one of the wealthiest men in Britain, the collectors who built his distribution network died as what they had always been. Working men with a decent earner on the side and a story nobody ever thought to write down. The pools gave ordinary people something no modern financial product has replicated. A weekly ceremony of legitimate, affordable, life-changing hope. Did you do the pools? Did you have your collector? Your regular man who knocked every Friday? Who knew whether you were in town? Before you opened the door? Did you ever get close? Did you sit with the results on a Saturday afternoon, going through the drawers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then the deflation of the 8th one going wrong? I want to hear every story. Tell me in the comments below, and if this brought back a memory, please share it with someone who needs to remember today. Subscribe to Yesterday UK, take care of yourselves, and I will see you in the next one.